Mhm. Everyone, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can, Susan.
Terrific. Thank you very much. All right, so I am going to be introducing this next session, which has a very distinguished panel of speakers. Vishal Talreja from India, who is an educator and social entrepreneur, co-founder of Dream a Dream, along with 11 other people. And Dream a Dream is a registered charity that works with children and young people from vulnerable backgrounds so that they can flourish in today's world using 21st century skills. We also have Dr. Juliette Tourabian. She's a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Luxembourg and also a senior expert in international development and education. And she brings more than 20 years of field experience from around the world. And last but not least, we have Wan Jung, and she's a doctoral candidate at the Department of Education, Beijing Normal University. She's very interested in the field of principal leadership and school management improvement, with a particular focus on the perspective of social and emotional learning. So those are our speakers for this session, and we would like to hold the questions until the end so that we can get some lively discussion going. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Vishal, who will be directing his own PowerPoint, and I will be timing you. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. So how much time do I have? And will you give me a warning?
You have 18 minutes, and I will give you a warning when you have 2 minutes left.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just sharing my presentation. Can everyone see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
You can put it on the presentation mode if you want.
Try to do that. Okay. Great. Hello, everyone. It's a huge honor to be with all of you today, share a bit of our own experience in India around social emotional learning and how we have tried to integrate it to create educational transformation. Like Susan mentioned, my name is Vishal Talreja. I'm the co-founder of Dream a Dream, a non-profit based out of India. Dream a Dream is a 23-year-old organization, and right from the beginning, our focus has been life skills and social emotional learning. We started our work directly working with young people coming from wonderful backgrounds. We continue to do that work with about 7,000 young people a year now, and that work is categorized as an innovation lab where we bring in new pedagogical approaches, new curriculum, new assessment frameworks, all focused on how can we continue to develop SEL and life skills approaches to help young people thrive. The insights from the innovation lab now move into what we call the systems demonstration phase, where we work with state governments across India in helping them transform education through introducing new curriculums, new pedagogical approaches, new training frameworks and assessment frameworks, all focused on SEL and life skills. And the third piece that we do is what we call building the field, where we focus on working with key stakeholders across across the country on how we can shift mindsets around the core purpose of education to thriving for every child, more away from just a focus on academic excellence. So this has been our work over the last 23 years. Uh, Now, something that has helped our work, especially in the last 3 to 4 years, what is happening in the country. So while Dream and Dream has been focusing on SEL since 1999, uh, it was still considered outside core education philosophy. But in 2020, the government of India came up with the National Education Policy, revised education, child development for every child, and to do that using social emotional learning and life skills as a grounding, as a foundation. Building on the National Education Policy of 2020, the government has come up with a national curriculum framework, which emphasizes the need for a holistic approach to education that promotes overall development, which includes, in addition to physical and cognitive skills, social and emotional learning skills. The Grants Commission also has come up with their own curriculum for higher education, which they call Jeevan Kaushal, which is a Hindi term for life skills. They that in higher education should be a core life skills that actually and that in the practice also mental health challenges with young people coming back into a school system after nearly 1.5 years of school closure has shifted the sector, the education sector in India quite fundamentally, and I reckon also in many other parts of the world, where there has been an increased and enhanced conversation around the need for whole child development, holistic learning, and the need for well-being for every child. And the way to bring that into the education system has been through the introduction of social emotional learning. So it has almost come to the mainstream conversation, which has been very exciting for us. And I'll share with you some of the examples of what we are doing in partnership with different state governments. There's a lot more happening in the country itself, which is very encouraging in the SEL space. Today, Dream and Dream has been working with nearly 6 state governments across India, 5 of them for a few years now, and Nagaland, which is a state in the northeast of India, we've just started work, so we are still in the pre-industry stage. But in the other 5 states, we have introduced a variety of transformative initiatives that focus on social emotional learning that I will speak about. But combined our work across these 5 states today reaches maybe about 1.5 million kids. One of the first partnerships that we had with the state government was with Delhi. This was in 2018 when they invited us and a group of other civil society organizations and experts to help them design a well-being focused curriculum, which came to be called the happiness curriculum. The happiness curriculum, at the core of it, is focused on helping children develop harmony within themselves and discover a sense of self in the process of learning. The problem statement that they came with is that when they saw children coming into public schools, their relationship with the school was that of fear and disengagement, and they wanted to change that. They wanted the child's relationship with school and learning to be that of joy and engagement. And they believed that a happiness curriculum would potentially help us get there. It was largely driven by the Ministry of Education at that time in Delhi. So he was personally involved. So today, the happiness curriculum in Delhi has been running for 5 years. It ran virtually also through the pandemic when schools were closed. It reaches about 1,000 odd schools, about 800,000 students. It's a 35 to 40-minute class that is brought to every child in Delhi public schools from kindergarten to grade 8, 6 days a week. And we help them develop the curriculum, we help them develop the training framework for teachers, we help them build a cadre of who go out and train teachers, cadre of mentors who work with the happiness teachers in various schools. Key component of the curriculum is mindfulness, storytelling, play-based activity, expression. This curriculum, because it's been running for 5 odd years, we've also had a chance to run third-party evaluations and also bring in OECD for their 15-country SEL study. And these evaluations are already showing us that there has been significant improvement in a whole set of social emotional skills for children in Delhi. And more such evaluation studies are underway and reports are going to be published shortly. The second state that we started working with, the south of India, is Telangana. In Telangana, they introduced 2 different curriculums. Both curriculums focused on social emotional well-being of children. Now, one curriculum, Chelimi, is designed for public schools. Again, just for context, the majority of the children who come into public schools, or what we call government schools in India, are either first-generation learners or first-generation schoolgoers, which means their parents most likely didn't go to school or didn't finish school. And they largely come from backgrounds of marginalization and poverty. And public schools are struggling to keep them engaged, keep them in school. There are high instances of dropouts as children move from grades to grades. There's very little grade level learning happening. There are enough studies in India about that. So here the focus was how could we bring in a well-being focused curriculum, keep children engaged in school, have them get excited about learning, change the school environment itself. The project Chelimi is focused on public schools, and Project Parivarta means change, is focused on specialized residential schools which have been set up to cater to kids who come from tribal and social welfare backgrounds. And this is, Telangana has been a pioneer in the transformation of these residential schools over the last decade. So they invited us in to help them design a well-being focused curriculum. Again, the pedagogical approach has been mindfulness practices, art and theater, storytelling, and these people. Both these programs are running on a pilot basis, right? The Chalimi program in 40 schools for grades 6 and 7, and the Parivartana program again in about 40 residential schools. One of the key elements of these programs, one is they've been designed so that they can be delivered in local language. Second, teachers have been given a lot of freedom to deliver these curriculums in the way they feel is appropriate in the context that they're delivering in. And these guidebooks are designed not as linear, that you move from session 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. A teacher, when they walk into the classroom, if they feel considering the emotional stability of the classroom in that moment, chooses to do session 40, that's absolutely fine. So there's a lot of agency given to the teacher to respond to the context of their classroom. Teachers have also told us through field visits that they themselves have started advocating for caring and compassionate behaviors even outside the program. So it's also shifting the school climate quite fundamentally. This is another happiness curriculum in the third state called Jharkhand. They call it Harsh Johar, which is again means happiness festival in the local language. Again, focused on social emotional learning. This program is reaching out about 35,000 students across the state. One of the key elements of this program is that they have set up SEL corners in each school. These are spaces that are designed for children and young people that they can go in and do artwork or do any kind of creative activity. It's a space where they can express their emotions, do journaling, do arts and crafts. So really a space for kids to be themselves. There is a high level of also advocacy around parental engagement in this program and helping parents move their expectations from just schools being places where academics are focused on to schools being focused on social emotional learning and well-being of the children. It's also designed to shift what formal education looks like. So this is again a class that happens within the school calendar, within the 6 days of the school calendar. It's not an extracurricular or co-curricular session. And this is slowly shifting around what could we bring into the school calendar that is focused on well-being and thriving of every child. Uttarakhand is another state which has also introduced its own well-being focused curriculum. Uh, Here they have taken all 13 districts of the state. It's covering all the schools in the state. It's scaling out in a phased manner, again in support with the state government and its missionary. The key element of this partnership has been that they have invited us also to train principals and other key administrative stakeholders on the criticality and importance of social emotional learning. Our trainings are pedagogically designed as experiential learning environments. So principals themselves experience what happens to them when we invest in their own social emotional learning. So there's a higher level of buy-in, which then they take back to the school environment and encourage teachers to do this curriculum within the school calendar. The other interesting thing about this is that all the districts have made specific budget allocations for teacher training on the SCL curriculum. So that has been very good for the program itself. In Karnataka, it's the state where we are based in. It's not a curriculum, but it's a pedagogical practice and a teacher training process that they have invited us to introduce. So across the different departments that deliver and implement education in public schools, we have been invited to train teachers on pedagogical approaches related to social emotional learning. And this has been an interesting experience for us because what we're doing here is training teachers to create environments of creativity and empathy within the school, across the school day, across all the subjects. So how do they show up in the classroom is the focus of these trainings. How do they bring in playful learning practices, activity-based learning, creativity, and empathy-based practices in the school environment without introducing a whole new curriculum. And one of the things that's worked for us is that working again with the administrative stakeholders who are in charge of decision making and what happens in the school, and having them integrate some of these ideas in the school has helped us then create stickiness of the curriculum. This is the work that we're doing in states. We've also been working with the national body, which is the Central Board of School Education, the CBSE. And we've been invited to work with them on what they're calling the Holistic Progress Card. So this is a huge new initiative which is focused on looking at all aspects of the child's behavior and how do we learn to measure that and use that as a way to understand the child and support the child in the learning journeys. The Holistic Progress Card has been developed, we've reviewed it, we've tested it. It's in its pilot phase now, where it's been introduced in classes 1, 2, and 3 in 74 pilot schools, both urban and rural, and across government and private schools. And there's already some feedback coming in. There has been definitely an interest in using the Holistic Progress Card, but also there have been some questions around, could we do this, introduce the Holistic Progress Card along with an academic progress card? Or are we looking to move completely to a Holistic Progress Card and let go of the academic progress card? So these are questions that parents and teachers have been coming back with, and the school board is still thinking through what they want to do with it. Overall, when I look at the key insights that we have had, the work that we've done with the state governments and the central implementation agency has been since 2018, so it's been about 5 years now. Uh, One, there has been an intentional shift towards holistic learning and whole child development within the education ecosystem in India. And to achieve that, then integrating life skills and social emotional learning as key curriculum and pedagogical components. There has been an increasingly shift in the mindset of teachers around their role from just being a deliverer of knowledge to now being a facilitator of learning. And then, in order to achieve that, what are these skills, capacities the teachers will need to become to facilitators of learning? There is an understanding and recognition that we need to invest in teacher well-being, agency, and competency, and a recognition that if teachers are not feeling well, then they cannot necessarily invest in the well-being of children in the classrooms. So, what is needed as support systems to invest in teacher well-being? What is needed to unlock more of teacher agency? How can we learn to trust teachers more, give them more power on the ground that they can then respond to the context and challenges in their schools and classrooms? And what are the competencies that they need to help children be better prepared for the future and help children build capacities to thrive in the future? In either so, there has been a clear uh, in understanding and recognition, formative exam ranking assessment system, formative assessment system that help us understand the journey of each child and help us understand what support does the child need to get to a certain outcome of learning. And recognition that each child has different learning capacities, learning pace, learning capabilities, and how do we then design learning for each child that's personalized, and how can formative assessments help us do that? There are also, of course, it's not all that's working well. There are also a lot of things that need to continue to be working on. It's a journey that's just started, and we reckon it will take us another decade for us to really transform the education system in India, because it's big, it's complex. So some of the things that we're working on is one is building narratives across the larger ecosystem around shifting the purpose of education towards the idea of thriving for every child, or for how can every child have a thriving life. The second is working on shifting teacher and school leader mindsets. That, from SEL being looked at as a co-curricular, something that you do after school hours, something that you do, just to support your academics, to actually becoming a core approach for child development and success. One of the fears is if SEL is looked at from a lens of controlling behaviors, or as is looked at from helping children then achieve better academic success, then that will be a failure of SEL as a core foundational approach. But if SEL is looked at as a way for children to build capacities for a thriving life, where well-being becomes a core outcome, then it has amazing potential. Again, one of the things that has happened in India because of the success of the happiness curriculum in Delhi is that there has been a push towards introducing these 30 to 40-minute happiness classes. Now, while that's a great start, but if you just leave it to a 30, 40-minute class, it will lose its excitement very soon. But how do we start understanding SEL as a classroom practice approach, as something that the teacher uses through the day, through the school day, through the week, that the teacher integrates within themselves as how they show up in the classroom. So that's a piece of work that we're developing, working with teachers and school leaders. Also shifting pre-service and in-service teacher training in moving from academic focus to developing SEL skills, capacities, facilitative leadership skills, and also a deeper understanding of child development. One of the challenges when you have first-generation schoolgoers who largely come from experiences of poverty and marginalization is that they're coming from experiences of early childhood adversity. And they're bringing those experiences into the classroom environment at the age of 3, 4, 5. And if teachers don't understand the impact of adverse childhood experiences on a child's ability to learn and engage with learning, they will not be able to bring their child up to learning levels. The child will keep falling behind and ultimately drop out of the school system. So So how can training be shifted to understand some of the aspects of child development? A big shift of a big piece of our work in advocacy has been working with parents. If you walk into any school, a private school or a public school in India today, ask parents, what do you expect the school to do? The parents will say, I expect the school to help my child learn the subject, get top ranks, and go into university, get top ranks, get a job. How do we help parents to shift that expectation? That what we're looking for is for every child to have a thriving life, and academic success is one route for that. It's not the only route. There are many other routes to have a thriving life. And how can parents start shifting the questions that they're asking from the education system? Can parents start asking questions around, is my child happy? Is my child making friends? Is my child being kind? Is my child being helpful to others? In addition to what is my child learning? That will be a big shift in parental expectations. The last piece is social emotional learning is quite engaging for children and teachers, but building teacher and student agency within the system requires working across the hierarchy. And what we've seen is when we train, say, 20 teachers from a school and transform them fundamentally to bring in creativity and empathy within the school environment, if the school leader has not bought into that idea or the administrative head has bought into the idea, then they're going to continue to push for conventional outcomes, the academic outcomes. So if we have to truly have SEL stick as a pedagogical approach, as a curricular approach, as a framework, then we have to work across the hierarchy. And that's absolutely critical if we want to truly transform education across the country. Thank you. I'll close with this quote that one of the teachers in one of the public schools that we work with said. She said, I strongly feel that if a teacher becomes creative and adopts SEL practices, children will become more confident and share a strong relationship with their teachers. We're beginning to see increasingly more and more teachers say this. Thank you again, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open up for questions.
Thank you. We're going to hold questions until the end. We're going to launch directly. No problem. No problem at all. We're going to launch into the next presentation, which is from Dr. Juliet Turabian. She's going to talk about understanding SEL from an intersectionality perspective of inequalities. And I believe the screen should be available for you to share now. And I will send you a message, Dr. Turabian, when you have 2 minutes remaining. So please take a look at your chat, and then when it's time, you'll see my picture pop up.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, let me go to, right. I hope you can see my PowerPoint.
Yes.
Good, lovely. So hello everyone. Before anything, I would like to thank Dr. Naji for extending invitation to me to some of the outcomes of the European Horizon 2020 project, in which I'm the deputy coordinator, called Pioneered. I will provide the link to this project later. So our project, before I start, I just want to say that our project was not directly related to social and emotional skills and competencies, but what happened is that as we progressed in our research, we realized more and more, and that is, this is a main topic that brings, let's say, many policies and practices across the countries in which we did research together. As an introduction, I would like to talk about the education and inequalities, which have attracted much attention across research, policy, decision-making, and of course, the consequent reforms across the world, including in Europe. One reason for this attention to education and inequalities is the fact that all of these policy and in decision making actually believe in education as whether it is the case or not, that's another thing. But the idea of education, and with increasing social inequalities that we have across and within the countries, based on economic background, migration background, linguistic background, gender, and of course conflicts that are increasing around the world. Well, the role of education is now being even further questioned, whether it is an equalizer or is it a reproduction mechanism that is becoming more into the attention of research and policymakers. Now, in all of the reports that we see around the world, there is much reference to what I have called in my book educational capital. Rather than a focus on learning. There is a division, as we all know, there is a differentiation between learning and education. But much attention has actually been given to education. And we do not still have a clear conceptual framework, for example, to divide learning from education and then having data based on these and then creating, let's say, categories of institutions and countries. For the time being, we are actually focusing on educational capital. And what actually started out back in 2018. They also had a report after COVID-19 about this, but still it remains a blurry kind of a division that we as practitioners know, but it is not actually reflected as it should be in international reports and assessments. Now, just a little bit about this division that I'm talking about. If you're talking about learning, you're talking about the continuity of learning that can happen anywhere in formal, non-formal, and informal settings. While for education, what I have actually proposed in my conceptual framework is that we are mostly talking either about schooling, so the quality of the schooling, teacher-student ratio, all the data that, for example, you can find in UNESCO Institute of the Statistics report, or UNICEF, or many other international organizations. There is also another aspect to this educational capital, which is the educational infrastructure, so the buildings, the architectural design, the lab facilities, and all of that. Again, as you can see, most of it that we have around the world is in fact acting on these two, rather than any that focuses on learning, which means, for example, observational skills, motivation of the students, social and emotional skills, communication skills, their analytical minds. We don't have this because these are more qualitative rather than the things that we can provide data and say, oh, this country is doing well or that institution is doing better compared to the other one. Or, for example, what are the gaps in requirements. Now, why am I talking about this is the fact that in Pioneered, my project, our project, we tried bringing together, we started with education quality. We wanted to know what is happening to students with different social origin, gender, ethnicity, immigrant background, disability, and what are the intersectionality of these disadvantages affecting their educational, academic, let's say, achievement and transition. We started with that. The framework was an innovative one. We went for a multi-level life course intersectionality approach. We have 9 countries across Europe, 13 higher education institutions and research institutes. And we started in March 2021. We are about to finish. We are organizing the final conference in January 2020. that are trying to tackle educational that are out there, and what is the degree of bridging and institutionalization of non-formal learning to tackle educational inequalities in formal settings. If you want to have more information, this is the project's website. You can go there. We have had some public deliveries as well. And as you can see, this actually tells you better what I just already said. So we went through a live course understanding of disadvantages and inequalities in education, from early childhood education to tertiary education. We conducted a multi-level framework, meaning based on macro level education, institutional and school settings, and practice, and also at micro level, meaning analysis of the disadvantages of the students in their background. And this is how we started. Now, the outcome of our research actually brings us towards competencies, and I'm going to little by little explain to you how. One of the outcomes, main outcomes of our research is that a majority of educational inequalities in academic achievement and transition have their sources outside of the formal education system. For example, the linguistic and cultural capital of the students that do not match the formal medium of instruction and the formal setting of an educational system. Neighborhood and peer impact on students' capacities, social and emotional skills that do not actually prepare them to function properly in the formal setting of the educational system. Family resources, their socioeconomic, cultural, and educational background. There is much data about this across the world. In EU, we have the EU statistics that shows that there is a correlation between these and the students' academic achievement and transition. Migration background and its intersection with the students' gender, language, and socioeconomic status. So there are many, what we realized, what we saw across these 9 countries is that there are pioneering policies and practices attempt to bridge the formal and non-formal education system to reduce these manifestations of failure in the formal education system. And how do they do it? They actually go and search to develop the students' emotional and social competencies in order for them to actually better achieve their academic goals in the formal system. One example is the Norwegian case when we actually talked to a small a non-formal sector practitioner who actually talked about some of the students who had their hoodies down and would actually not engage in any type of eye contact or any type of communication, and they were somehow rejected by the formal education system. Arrived in this non-formal place where they started doing group work, theater, arts, sports, fishing, and eventually they opened up, removed the hoodies, and started communicating, developing further their emotional and social competencies, then going back to the formal system again. Of course, this is a very positive case that I'm in fact, still widening the gap outside of the school between students. There is private and public education quality that differs and therefore acts as a kind of a differentiation between how students perform. There's a lack of funding. There is sometimes lack of political willingness in education systems, and therefore they actually create a kind of a reproduction mechanism of the social inequalities that exist outside of the school, inside the school, to benefit the social economic elite. Another outcome of our research is that many of the educational inequalities can also be sourced inside of the formal education system. The school composition and the school segregation is one of those. Lack of trained teachers and hiring processes that reduce opportunities of mutual bonding and exchange between students when, for example, teachers are on short contracts, short trainings before the academic year starts, just to respond to the number of teachers that the Ministry of Education actually needs that academic year. Teachers' personal perceptions of authority, well, as human beings, despite any training, some of them may have radical ideas, and this was in fact something that one of the other speakers actually talked about. How they perceive diversity. They do not actually talk about ethnic diversity positively in their classroom. Well, it doesn't actually provide the opportunity for emotional and social skills of the students to understand diversity. There is curriculum and extracurricular activities that may further segregate students based on their gender, their migration, their linguistic background. School leadership and their vision was something that we understood during our visits to Luxembourg, for example, schools that are very well developed. Buildings are very, very well. There are big gyms and sports facilities, big libraries. But we actually understood that it is that spirit of the leadership that is very important. The building is just a facet. You can have best of the buildings and best of the facilities, but if the leadership of that school is not into providing equal opportunities and participation opportunities for its students, it doesn't serve anything. Peer impact again, and lack of psychosocial and academic support. Again, here we we observed and studied many pioneering policies and practices that in this case try to reform the formal education system. So in the previous case, as you saw, I'm just going to quickly go back. For the outside sources of inequalities, there is a bridge between formal and non-formal to develop students' emotional and social competencies so that they can perform better in the formal system. Those internal sources of inequalities, well, we have all seen it. There are myriads of reforms for different political and economic reasons for the formal education system to reduce and hinder the reproduction of social inequalities in the form of educational inequalities. We have a myriad of examples. If you want to, I can later talk about them. There is for example, the Mosaic schools in Switzerland are multilingual, and they try to provide different activities for students so that they can integrate in the multilingual system of the country. There are second chances schools in Spain and Luxembourg for youth who have left the school in order for them to integrate, and there is a social and emotional support and psychological support and development of skills for these students, particularly so that they can get reintegrated. And for example, the units which are called SOPAS in Luxembourg as well. So there's a unit with psychosocial assistants who work directly with teachers in order to provide the necessary support to students who are disadvantaged or who have academic concerns, for example. Drawing on the outcomes of our 3 years of research pioneered, I think it is safe to say that developing the students' social and emotional skills is one of the most significant ways that we can facilitate the students' learning capital with positive impact on their educational inclusion and achievement. Of course, there had been many researchers showing the mutual relation between emotional and social skills and competencies and the cognitive achievement of the students in school. Are we progressing? The question is this. The last thing, okay, 2 minutes, all right. So thank you, Susan. With all of these pioneering policies and practices that are trying to tackle the educational inequalities through increasing the students' learning capital and the development of their social and emotional skills, are we progressing? Yes, there is an awareness across practitioners and policymakers about both the internal and external factors that are leading to educational inequalities. And there is a sort of, to different degrees, initiatives that are trying to bridge non-formal education as a way to create the basis of emotional and social skills for students that would help them in the formal education. There are reforms in the formal education, and to a lesser degree, including parents, and creating continuity between formal and informal are in fact most observable in the policies and practices. I have just given a list of some of the activities that we have seen, policies and practices that we have seen across these 3 years of research. What are the remaining, what are we still facing this lack of development of the social and emotional skills with their consequent the consequences on the academic achievement of students? Well, across EU and also globally, there is an obsession with academic achievement among policymakers, students, teachers, and parents alike, which are magnified by international tests such as PISA, for example. This reduces social and emotional competencies to a second and a lower degree of importance, while without a comprehensive and holistic approach to learning capital, we cannot improve education. There is also a focus on, as I said, on quantitative educational capital rather than qualitative learning capital of students, and therefore it is being sidelined. Another thing that we do not have, and I'll finish now, is that, there is less focus on the life course of the accumulation of advantages or disadvantages that actually affect the student's social and emotional learning and capacity development. Um, I think institutionalizing the bridges between informal, non-formal, and formal education can actually help a better development of social and emotional capacities, inclusion, and eventually a better social cohesion. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll remain here for questions at the end of this session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Turabian, and thank you for reminding all of our participants here that please send me any questions you may have in the chat. We've already started to receive some, and all of our participants, all of our panelists, excuse me, will be available at the end to address those questions. So moving on, our final presentation in this session will be from Zheng Wanying, Empowering Students Through Social and Emotional Learning, a decade of experience in China. So thank you. Are you able to share your screen?
First, thank you, Susan. First.
Okay, and please check your 2-minute warning.
Okay, thank you. So can you see my screen now?
Yes. If you could make it, yes, bigger, thank you.
Okay. And hello everyone, it's an honor to share our research here. I am Guanying Zhang from Beijing Normal University in China, and I am a social emotional person, and this research and I would like to present today is empowering students through social emotional learning. And the social emotional learning is an internationally recognized reform and exploration initiative aimed at enhancing students' social emotional skills and improving the overall quality of the basic education, with the goal of providing every student with a high quality education. And as we all know, in 2015, the UNESCO passed the Education 2013 Framework for Actions at the headquarters in which emphasized that education must not only focus on the cognitive development but also focus on students' emotional intelligence. So, in the context of the global education, the SEL project has been widely implemented in many countries such as the United States, Singapore, Japan, and in China, the Ministry of the Education Teacher Work Department and the United Nations Children Fund started the SEL project in 2011. And since then, the project team have provided the whole school promotion mode of the project design in 250 rural primary schools in the region. And over the past decade, from the 2011 to 2021, the project has developed a Chinese experience and characteristics-based SEL implementation model and pathway for the social emotional competence development of Chinese students. So here I would like to share the overall of the background and our theoretical framework outcomes in China. So the first of all, I want to share is the background of the students' SEL project in China, so we can better understand why we need to have this project. So the first or because maybe some researchers have do some a paper to talk about the long-standing cognitivism in the field of basic education have led in China have led many people to overly pursue the development of the cognitive development, and we, in some point, we neglect other crucial aspects of the students, such as the social emotional competence. So, at 2013, a survey conducted by Chinese Youth Mental Health Research Group, we found that the teenagers face the mental health problem such as they have the pro-academic adaptation and they have some emotional problems. So, in order to increasing the students' the development and to face these programs, we start this project, and we want to shift from a single-minded cognitive approach to a more diversified whole child development orientation to fulfill the development need for of our students. And the next one, I want to share our dimensional model of the student social emotional competence. And we know every country have their own definition of social emotional competence. And in China, we proposed that student social emotional competence is the ability of individuals to develop awareness and management of their own relationships with others, and with themselves, with others, and with the cognitives in a complex situation of growth and development. Essentially, social emotional competence is in in the relationship and construct through the experiences and interaction in action and building their perception and understanding of oneself and others and the world. So human social emotional are continuously constructed and reconstructed through the interaction between uh, one person uh, and with their internal psychological activities and social environment during the connective action. So therefore, The social emotional competence is essentially a social construct ability of relationships, which every individual need to master to construct the various real relationship to satisfy their spiritual pursuit and life value and achieve a happy life. Following the standards test development procedure, the project team developed a dimensional model of social emotional competence, including the self-awareness, self-management, other awareness, other management, and connective awareness and connective management. So for the reason we proposing the dimension of the connective is mainly due to the following two considerations. For the one hand, according to Chinese culture, Chinese people have a different rules and habits when dealing with the problem with others and with the connective. Will the value uh, uh, being kind to others and establishing the interpersonal relationship with the former, and they emphasize the individual obedience to the connective with the later. And so therefore the connective assume a more important role in their minds. On the other hand, according to some research in China, we found that the emotional information in the social and physical environment, it be it be in which can compose in different groups such as the interpersonal growth and the connective emotional information. So we propose the six dimension model of the social emotional competence, as we can see in the figure one. So next one, I want to share about the selection of the areas and the experimental schools in our project. We selected the project schools following the principles of volunteering application, and we mainly consider the following considerations. So the first one is the volunteering um, participation, and the second one is the openness and the autonomy, and the third one is the stability, and the last one is under the equal condition. And when under the equal condition, we will give them the remote and the rural areas more chance, or the weaker school more chance. So the next one is about our experimental intervention process. And the intervention process of this experiment mainly underwent four major stages. For the first one is comprehensive diagnosis based on the facts. This means that we conducted the based on the internal quality view of the social orientation and the self internal orientation. And based on this system, our research team conducted a comprehensive diagnosis and developed the level of students' internal quality is the social emotional development of all project school. And uh, the we have do a survey about the teachers quality, such as the teacher social emotional competence, teachers work achievement, and teacher job satisfactions. And we have the survey about the school supportive environment, such as the school management, school atmosphere, and the parent school cooperation, and so on. It's the first step. And the step two is about the version and the planning for internal quality improvement with the theoretical support. And the inter quality of the improvement is a continuously process that require a shift from the mindset of identifying and repairing programs for the normal operation of the school in the past to finding a breakthrough the guidance of the school. And sorry for that. And so for this, we based on the school development and the planning theory, we draw on the experiments of the International Social Learning Project and School Positive Change. We have the plan for the whole school, and we have the training for the principals to have the school plan of the whole year. And the third step is to guided by the institution reform and comprehensive improvement of the school. And the fourth step is using the curriculum as a layer to establish the three-in-one religion, internal quality improvement into the mechanism. So under the fourth step, we have the whole year experiment at our project school. So the next one is about our experimental interventions. And from the ecosystem perspective, the project team have developed the project resource and implemented training around these 6 areas. And the first one is about the comprehensive reform planning for social emotional learning management. And for this step, we will establish the school version for social emotional learning and analyze the current status of the social emotional learning implementation in schools. And the second is about the capability building for teachers and principals. We have some training and we have some guidebook for them to enhance their personal social emotional competence. The next one is to develop the school-based social emotional learning curriculum. As we all know, learn from the international advanced experience and implement school-based social emotional learning curriculum consisting of we have the provide comprehensive and systematic curriculum material and resource for them. And the next one is the integration of social emotional learning into disciplinary teaching. And in addition, we have developed the teacher social emotional competence to help to enhance their well-being and to enhance teacher psychological health, teaching ability, and job performance. And the fifth one is construction of positive and inclusive school atmosphere. And so the last one is to building a respectful homeschool partnership. And according to this, we have do this reform intervention for almost 10 years. And after this, we have effect of the experimental intervention. And we can say in table 1, after we do this project, the students in project, their social emotional competence have totally improved in every stage.
We are members who trust each other.
So last one is the short summary, and after we have conducted this project for 10 years, we will continually do this project, and now we have already started our second stage, and it already started this year, and it's from 2023 to 2025. So in the future, we will have more projects due in the whole China area, and we will have the further exploration and consideration, the focus on student social emotional competence and the student teacher teams and the whole school management to meet the needs of the social emotional education. And that's all for my presentation today. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I have a couple of questions here from the audience. The first question is for Dr. Michelle. Recently, the Ministry of Education in Morocco has adopted TARL, or Teaching at the Right Level, from the Pratham Institute in order to enhance student learning basic skills. Are there any studies conducted in India in order to prove the impact of such a method? And then also if other of our panelists are aware of any TARL studies.
Sure. I'm not very familiar with what's happening in Morocco with her, but Pratham has done this over 3 decades in India, and they've done multiple studies to showcase and demonstrate that teaching at the right level does help children improve largely their numeracy and literacy skills. That's where they have confined it to, focusing on grade level learning of numeracy and literacy. They haven't expanded the scope to social emotional learning.
Okay. Thank you. Would anyone else of our panelists like to add about that? Yes, Flavia, would you like to add something?
Hi everyone, this is Flavia from Florida State University. I have like a multi-question that could go for different presenters. The first one is for Vishal. It was what was the process to scale up these life skills and social emotional learning integrated curriculum to formal schools, and how principals and teachers are trained for both the pre and in-service programs. And I think that that question also applies for Juliet in terms of how this becomes integrated in the formal schools, like the pioneer programs, how you get to that point, what steps are included in that process of scaling up or integrating into the existing formal schools. And just a comment about the third presenter about the integration of culturally relevant aspects or dimensions to the social emotional learning like circle of what needs to be put into education for bridging that social emotional learning into formal schools and formal learning. And I really like that idea of the collectivist and versus the individualist growth. So I found that very interesting. It's the first time that I came across with somebody presenting the cultural dimensions of that model. Thank you, and I'll leave to the presenters now.
Thank you, Flavia, for the question. So GP focused on building our own curriculum strength and pedagogical strength for the first time. And around 2015 is when we started convening policymakers, other nonprofit leaders, academics, at a conference called Change the Script, where we wanted to showcase what is the impact of social media and life skills on people. and how we could collectively think of ideas on bringing them into the system. At one of these events, we had the Minister of Education from Delhi attending. He really liked the pedagogical approach, and he had already been thinking of this well-being program. So he invited us and a group of others to help them design that. So that was really the beginning of a systems level integration of social emotional learning curriculum. Now, the implementation of it itself, we realized that in Delhi, with 1,000 schools, 18,000 teachers delivering it, training 18,000 teachers on this whole new approach is going to be very complex and take a long time. So two, three things we changed. One was that we designed the curriculum very intuitively, because using, say, activities, songs, creative expressions that teachers would already know from their own community and context from their childhoods. So they could just read through the guidebook and know what is expected of them, what they need to do. Second was building this team of mentor teachers who acted as, so every school had a mentor teacher. Every mentor teacher was working at 5 schools, and their role was to go into these schools when the happiness sessions are happening and support the teachers. And these mentor teachers went through intensive training on a pedagogical approach, almost 10 days of training every year over the last 5 years. And then each school appointed a happiness coordinator, which was a teacher, subject matter teacher, who was kind of also elevated to be a happiness coordinator. And their role was to create peer learning circles with other teachers, other schools, see what's working, see what's not working. It took us a year to take it from, say, 20% of the teachers being really excited about taking this curriculum on and doing it, delivering it, to nearly reaching about 60 to 70% of the teachers accepting this new approach, new curriculum, and delivering it. Once that happened, we also brought this curriculum out into the media, into global media, into national media, got policymakers to visit from other states, and they then saw the impact of this curriculum in the classroom and went back and said, we want to do this in our state. So that created this ripple effect where other states also started taking on the idea of well-being focused curriculum.
Thank you. Juliet, did you?
Thank you so much.
Yes, Flavia, thank you very much for your question. Your question was how pioneering policies and practices are actually integrated into the formal schools, the formal education system. According to our research across these 9 countries, there are ways, there are 2 main ways. One, through policies, therefore the macro level have a trickle effect on institutions at meso level and then on micro practitioners' practice. So a guiding, let's say, role of policies in order to integrate. I mean, there's an awareness educational piece that can be tackled in the way, and that policy how it is tackled, and then with the trickle down effect on the meso and micro. There are sometimes what countries was that we have also bottom up let's say practices that go through a cycle of test and trial, show their impact, and they bring them to themselves, and people get interested in them, including researchers and then of course policymakers. So there are 2 main ways that we have seen policies being enacted and having an impact. Now, to the role of formal and non-formal education, we developed a kind of a framework based on what we saw, the role of these 2 systems. And that was that to integrate the students, to include the students, develop their social and emotional skills, to help them with their academic achievements, to reintegrate if they have left with that. non-formal education actually comes to the rescue. But the problem is, in some countries, you do not have a policy that institutionalize this bridging between the non-formal and formal education. So the bridging remains scattered and to a lower, let's say, degree and a span of coverage. It has a smaller scope. Comes down to, for example, initiatives taken by this NGO or by that NGO or by this non-formal sector, for example, part of the sector. But when it becomes institutionalized, meaning that the policy says that, for example, the policy provides the basic vouchers, responsibility of different stakeholders. The overall aims are for social cohesion within a diverse education system, for example. Integrating ethnic groups, integrating different linguistic migrant groups through social and emotional skills, then it becomes a coherent system which is pioneered for a longer period of time until we get to the level of, let's say, problems or challenges. So there is, I can say that there is, where we have seen better continuity and comprehensive coverage of both non-formal and formal education through policies, or sometimes when we have practice that affects the policy and then creates a policy environment, students, competency development, then we have a better result. It's different in every context. It depends on the cultural background, the political background of every context. We cannot take just a short thing. We didn't choose the word best and good practice because it takes it away from that contextual relation. We said pioneering policies and practices, meaning that there is a historical, contextually based understanding of the challenges that the students have, and then within that context, policy or practice is actually pioneering in tackling inequalities. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, you did beautifully. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question that's come through in the chat, and this is for Dr. Jung. What kind of problems or limitations have you found in the study that was done in China? And is the data set of the study available online, or is there a publication for the study?
Thank you for the question. And when we conduct our project in China, we actually make many programs, such as when we want to have the class, social emotional class in the school. Some teachers and some principals, they don't understand what we are doing, and so there is some class programs, and so now we are conducting our project from the upper to the lower program, and we need the support from the principal. We need support from some the education management, and when they support us, we can conduct our project in the school more friendly. And other side, it's also my program is I thought that the social emotional competence is a very complete complete skill. It conducts many kind of different kind of skills in this social emotional competence. So when we want to improve the students' social emotional competence, maybe we need to conduct the project in many different aspects. And on the other side, it's very difficult to know if our intervention is effective. So it's very difficult to know the result, and it's know how to know our project intervention is effective is our the questions we are meeting now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think there was one more question. Erin, would you like to ask a question, Dr. Benabot?
Wonderful session, really helpful, interesting. So, and it's really the juxtaposition of hearing from these three very distinguished presenters. One of the takeaways that I have in listening to the presentations has to do with, let's say, the consequences of integrating, let's say, social emotional learning, whether it be in the formal or the non-formal. Some of these consequences are at the individual level, some of them are more, let's say, at the collective level. At the individual level, we have a lot of literature that talks about how students, by enhancing SEL, tends to also enhance their kind of academic outcomes. We heard from Vishal the importance that it also has in terms of promoting well-being and thriving at the individual level. We also heard from some of the research that I'm working on in the area of climate change education, that it affects the willingness of young people to be more action-oriented, take action with respect to, let's say, climate challenges. But we also heard about some of the consequences at the aggregate level, the society level, things to do with, as Juliet talked about, reducing educational inequalities, reducing sense of marginalization, potentially improving social cohesion, things to do with strengthening, even in the Chinese sense, strengthening interpersonal relationships, both between the self and the other and the collective. So I'm left with this kind of gnawing feeling that maybe social emotional learning is the key to kind of improving many different aspects of society, both at the individual level and the collective level. And maybe we're overselling ourselves, and maybe there is, from a strategic policy perspective, that promoting social emotional learning that has all these various outcomes seems to make it into a panacea of sorts. With enough SEL, you can solve all the problems, both at the individual and the collective level. Maybe we need to be more judicious about and prioritizing which aspects have more or less consequences. I wonder if the speakers might speak to that comment.
Thank you very much, and very nice to see you after all these years, after UNESCO. I would say, yes, I do agree with you. We cannot say, that social and emotional skills are like the answer to all of our problems. Otherwise, we will be risking becoming another layer of, one solution feeds all purposes and all problems. As I said, I can just refer to our early research. One of the things that we arrived at is actually social and emotional skills and the development of these competencies for academic achievement and its relationship, the relationship between non-cognitive and cognitive skills and competencies. It's not the answer to all. What I personally would argue for, in line with what actually, in agreement with what you just said, is actually for our global reports, our international tests, to somehow integrate, as there has been a trend, for example, with the OECD social and emotional skills reports, in order to have a kind of a more more importance attached to the learning capital of the students, because for the time being, we know that across many countries, we have students going to schools, not learning to read and write, or doing, not having enough capacities to perform in society. Which means I think we need to make a balance between how obsessed we are going to be with grades and academic achievement, and how important on the side, or at least as part of the general holistic overview that we have our students' capacities, their social and emotional skills are, and how that affects their learning. And are we going to be continuing with these statistics that would say, okay, if you have a ratio of, for example, 1 teacher to 18 students, bravo, well done, this is a very high quality education? Or are we also going to work on the softer skills of the teacher, the softer skills of the students, and integrating them into our global data in order to have a better understanding of both, rather than this current, what I see for the past 30 years, let's say, on what is the infrastructure, what are the facilities, and all of that. I mean, we talk about many of the soft parts of education, like curriculum, like content, like teacher training and all of that. But do we actually integrate them into the way that we understand the development of countries, for example? Not yet. So that's my take from what we talked about, and I do agree with you. We cannot say that social and emotional skills, they are very important, but they are not the answer to all of the challenges that we have in our student systems. And thank you very much.
Thank you. So technically we're on break, so I think it's important to hear what you have to say. But of course, if anybody would like to go for break, please feel free. The next session will begin in half an hour.
I'll try to keep a quick response. Thank you, Karen, for that very mindful reflection. And if my presentation did kind of showcase SEL as a silver bullet, that was definitely not my intention. And I will be very worried if it came across like that. However, having said that, our own experience of working with children growing up in vulnerability is that the current education system, which is designed a one-size-fits-all linear education system, is only working in the top 10 to 15%. It is not working for 80 to 85% of kids who are coming into the school system. In fact, it is failing them terribly. Even if kids are coming out of the school system with some grades, so university, finishing university, they are neither prepared for employment nor for life. So from that lens, the pendulum has moved too far on one side. We need to bring the pendulum back to some sense of balance. And the balance for me is the investment that we do on understanding what is the purpose of education, and how will that purpose help us design or even shape the societies of the future. The choices, the education that a bunch of us got 30 years, 40 years back, and what that ended up doing was creating a set of individuals who made choices around how economies are designed, how the climate is shaped, how pollution is happening in the world, how polarization is happening. They were a very educated group of people who decided that it's a great idea to throw garbage in the oceans. And we have to go back and think about that. That something is fundamentally wrong for purpose of education. It's not working for everyone, and for those it's working, they are ending up making choices and decisions for a society that's creating complexity and problems that we're living in today. Social emotional learning is a tool, which is not the answer. A tool that could rebalance purpose of education towards more holistic towards ideas of what kind of society will we have 30 years from now, and if that's the kind of society we want, what is the kind of education we need to give our children today that's equitable, that's inclusive, that's diverse, and what role does an investment in the social competencies and emotional competencies of a child help do that, not just for the future, but also helping children who are growing up in adversity to catch up to the developmental milestones. And it's important to take that into consideration. Again, education system today is not taking into consideration the fact that you have a majority of children coming to the school for the first time who have experienced neglect, violence, abuse, abandonment, extreme poverty, war, displacement. They're not ready for a one-size-fits-all education. So education systems have to help them rebuild and heal from that trauma, and then become their own humans, become their own beings. So keeping that in mind, I think social emotional learning has an important role to play, but it is definitely not the silver bullet.
Thank you. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. I think that's a very positive note to end on. And the next session will begin in about 20 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.